welcoming you to a life of awareness. The Presence Projects is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kerzner.
Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kerzner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you deeply, wholeheartedly, and sincerely for joining me for this beautiful moment. The topic for today's podcast is Yoga for Presence. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce today's guest, Jorge Rivera. He is a yoga instructor, and I've invited him on this episode because I believe that yoga is one of the greatest presence tools that we can do. I personally have done yoga for quite a while. I was doing hot yoga and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I did injure myself, I'll give you that caveat, but before then I found it to be a really significant means to stay and enter into the present moment. Jorge is indeed the type of person, the type of instructor that can touch upon this topic. So Jorge, I want to introduce you. I want to welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
I think it would be great if you can spend a few moments introducing yourself to the audience, telling them a little bit about who you are, where you've come from, and some of the things that you're working on right now.
Yes, of course. So my background, I started with martial arts back when I was maybe 5. So I've always had that sense of awareness of my body and how it works. I started playing soccer in high school, and I got injured a lot. My knees, my ankles. I was always injured at a young age, and I was so kind of thrown back that at this age I'm getting injured. I should be in my prime. And I got into weight training. Again, more injuries came about. I was about 21 when I also got introduced to hot yoga. It was Bikram, actually. And within like a month, I started feeling a lot better, but it did not click with me. The whole Bikram for me wasn't my style. I liked the structure, I liked the discipline, but it wasn't for me. So I stopped doing it. I noticed my injuries coming back. I actually came across the Shanti Insanity Asylum DVD workouts, and there was a segment there where he has you do 30 minutes of stretching so that you're able to do all the stretches and all the workouts in his advanced trainings. Again, within that month, and actually a little bit less than a month, my injuries again were gone. So I'm looking online of what I can do. And at this time I was struggling a bit because I had just lost my stepfather. So I was a little bit lost. It's one of those things where you don't realize who you had until they're gone. And so again, I was trying to figure out who I was, and I was looking into nutrition, trying to better myself. So I was looking into nutrition, a program that I can start doing, and I came across Swiha. I went to my counselor, and I told her what I wanted to do. I think at the time for some reason, I wanted to work with pregnant women and have them throughout their 9 months, do yoga or do some kind of exercise. And I explained this to her, and she kind of just looks at me. She's like, "You should just take the 200-hour yoga teacher training." And I was like, okay, forgetting that yoga was just more than a physical aspect. And actually, I think at the time, I didn't even realize how much more of a physical practice it was. And the first week that I signed up for the 200-hour teacher training, I noticed huge shift in me. I was just aware of the fact that I was suppressing my emotions. I was so into my head that I noticed all the negativity and the voices that I would bring into my practice and throughout my day. I noticed that I wasn't present. I know we had talked about earlier as far as in your practice, you're worrying about other people's practices and judging yourself for not being able to touch your toes or whatnot. And that was me. And again, within this week, I was noticing all these shifts and all these changes, and that's when I knew. I was like, yoga is not just the physical aspect came so easy to me that once I got through that, then the real work started for me. The mental, the emotional, and the spiritual aspects. So yeah, that's kind of where it all began. These past 2 years, it's really where it's all been stirring up for me, and I've been able to, in a sense, serve it to myself, where I can digest it in a way that that makes sense, and it's an amazing practice for me that really has changed my life.
You touched upon quite a few different things that we can delve into. The first thing is that there are so many different kinds of yoga practices. There's something for everyone. So if you're thinking about doing yoga, but you tried it 1 time or 2 times and you said it's not for you, that's like learning how to swim and just dipping your toe in the pool and saying, well, I don't really like the way this feels. I can't do it. Yeah. There are so many different yoga studios and yoga teachers that there's something for everyone. And, on YouTube, you do a YouTube search for yoga, there's millions of hits there. So you can start at any point and find what kind of resonates deeply with you. You also touched upon the fact that yoga serves the mind, body, and spirit.
Yes.
And I think this is an important topic, because you can go into yoga and really just focus on the physical. And I mean, that's okay. It's okay if that's where you're at. But one of the things I notice is that it really does give you an opportunity to take some very clear observation to your thought stream. Mm-hmm. Like when you're in that room and you're holding those poses, you are there with your thoughts.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but it's one of those things where you can't ignore. You're gonna do the physical practice, and maybe that's what your mindset is, and that's what you feel like doing. But no matter what, the emotional is gonna come up, and the mental process is gonna come up. So if you say I'm just doing the physical practice, you're really not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're convincing yourself of one thing, but the reality is that if you start dedicating your practice, things are going to come up. Mm-hmm. And, I've seen people start crying in yoga. And I always think that's interesting, that you can have an emotional release by basically stretching. Yeah. In Chinese medicine, when we see trauma, when people go through trauma, we see that, emotions can get stuck. As an acupuncturist, it's my job to kind of help relieve that kind of stagnation, emotional or literal. With yoga, the art and beauty of yoga is that it encourages the body, the emotions, everything to flow a little bit more freely, or actually a lot more freely. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing, because so many people are in sedentary jobs, sedentary lifestyles where we're just stuck. Mm-hmm. Whether you're in your car, your job, at home, we're not moving enough. Yeah.
And that's actually a perfect way. That's a perfect way to start, to really get in, to be taught how to, even if you're just sitting in a chair, to just breathe. Focus on the breath. You don't have to do all these extravagant poses to do yoga. Yoga is just being present.
And beautifully said. But it's important to note that, you don't have to be putting your legs over your head. No. Okay, you don't have to be an advanced practitioner to make the most of it. There are no specific age groups that yoga serves specifically. This is for all ages, for all body types, for all races. It doesn't matter who you are. It has something for everyone. And you just touched upon an important facet, breathwork. Breathing by itself is an amazing presence tool, and I've touched upon it many times. But it's actually a really important component of yoga. You have to breathe during your practice. You won't get very far if you're not.
No, and it's funny you say that, because when we do any other exercise, we're not focused on the breath. And if we do yoga, or if we do a yoga sequence, and not focus on the breath, and we're just doing some other exercise. And there's so many times where I've gone back to, my weightlifting or my soccer, and I'm present with my breath. And I can tell with weightlifting, I don't have to do as much because I'm moving with my breath, and it takes so much more energy. I'm using all my muscles. I'm visualizing these muscles contract as the other ones just release. And same with soccer, I'm controlling my breath. Sometimes my breath is elevated and I have to bring it down so I can continue going. And before then, that wasn't a thing,
So it's helping to bring a certain level of awareness to the body and to the breath. And I think that's also an important topic to touch upon, because there is, in general, such a disconnection for many people between themselves and their bodies.
Yeah.
And yoga helps to really connect you to your body so that you can start feeling your feelings. You can start feeling your pains. We're so many people are so disconnected that they don't feel their illnesses or their emotions till they've already set in. Till it's already made its way in, and it's a bigger problem.
At that point, it's like exponentially grown that you feel it so much more.
Exactly. So the connection, the awareness, the awakening is what we're talking about, and that ultimately is the present moment, because you're in it. You're feeling your feelings. You're feeling your body. You're feeling your breath, and you are in the here and now. And that is why yoga is such an important presence tool. It's so beautiful.
For sure. Yeah.
So my question to you is, as a yoga instructor, when people come to your class, what are the things that you're observing when people just start, with their practice?
So the first thing, I like to get there a little bit early, and I like to be in my meditative state. So I'll meditate. I'll just sit there with my eyes closed, and at this point, my hearing, it's almost enhanced. So I hear footsteps, and I hear people trying to, tiptoe their way in, and then I'll notice people just kind of look around, and then they'll just, they don't know what to do. They kind of fidget. They don't know to stay still or to move or to do this or do that, to stretch before a yoga class. It's just, that's probably my first observation. And then once my class starts, I actually like to get them engaged. So I'll ask them, if all of these people in my class are new to my class, then I'll kind of do a small introduction, and then I'll ask them, if this is their first time, what their strengths are, and then I'll leave it at that. And then it's amazing to see how, not amazing in a good way, but to see how they struggle with what are your strengths, because I first started that with what are your weaknesses, and I mean everybody had things to say, but as soon as I switched it up, it just kind of shows me where they're at in their confidence level. So that allows me to choose poses that will build that confidence up, and that's kind of how I start. If there's mirrors in the class, I always direct them away from the mirrors. I always tell them, hey, this is your practice, so no one else matters. It's none of your business what other people think of you, so there's no reason to look over to your left or to your right to see if you're doing it the right way. You had touched upon yoga is for everybody, and I believe that 100%. Yoga is for every body type. So whether you are this bulky guy or this skinny lady, yoga is going to fit you. We're going to modify yoga for your body type instead of your body type for yoga. In that sense, it being very unique. So if I can put my leg over my head, doesn't mean you can, or the other way around. Or you should, yeah. So that's kind of what I
think that, that asking that question, what are your advantages? I think that just trips people up.
It really does.
And it if anything, it really makes them think about the fact that so many people are so focused on what's wrong that we forget to look at what's right. That's an eye opener. It has to be an eye opener for them because it's so difficult to say, oh wow, I'm good at all these things.
Yeah, the first reaction I see is everybody just kind of looks with their eyes open, and then they smile, they laugh. It's like, oh, because they know what's coming. They know that some, that's what they struggle with. And I think if we address that in the beginning, towards the end of the class, one of the best classes they've ever taken from feedback from what they say, So, and you can see that. You can see how that shifts for them. So it's an amazing feeling.
You talked about how people like to look around the room to compare themselves, to see if they're doing poses right. That is a presence distraction. That's that ego that's just scanning the room and comparing and contrasting and making those people feel either better or worse than everyone else. Yeah. And that's a level of awareness that we have to carry and say, why are we comparing ourselves, especially in a yoga room? But it's so common. I'll tell you honestly, in the beginning of my practice, I definitely was paying attention to a lot of other people, and I really shouldn't be. And honestly, it's not a criticism that if you do that, but we're just trying to raise awareness to say, stop looking at other people, stop comparing yourself. Everyone is traveling at a different rate.
Yes.
Everyone is, you don't know how much more practice the person next to you has undergone. I can guarantee you that they're not doing headstands the second class that they're in.
No.
You earn those headstands.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's hours upon hours of practice, and so you just don't know. And because you don't know, comparing yourself to that person is only doing you a tremendous disservice because it's pulling you out of that present moment.
Yes.
So let this just be a reminder. The next time you're at yoga or to the gym or wherever.
Yes, wherever.
Stop comparing yourself to other people.
Yes.
Stop it. It's not helping you. It's only hurting you, and it's pulling you out of the present moment because it has nothing to do with anything but your insecurities. And we don't want to feed those. No. We want to shed some light on it and say, no, you're okay. Everything's all right.
Yeah, you are exactly where you need to be.
Exactly. And you have to give yourself that assurance, because if you're constantly scanning, outside of yourself for confirmation that you're good enough or better, then you're always going to be looking for that. Yeah. We can do a whole podcast on that. Yes. Okay. So we're just going to bring it back to yoga right now. Jorge, I think this is a really great topic. I think it's really applicable to so many people because yoga has grown exponentially. Yes. It's as popular as I've ever seen it be. There are so many yoga studios here in the Valley. Like I said, there's something for everyone, and there's all different price points. Yeah. You can go from having private yoga instruction to a community setting. Or go to Swiha and take a class there. I'd imagine it's pretty affordable.
Yes, Soy Spirit of Yoga is their sister school, and they have a great view, which is it's nice to have that presence and that view. But I notice people getting distracted by it. So, but yes, it's very affordable there, and like you said, there are many studios out there that cater to many different styles and different body types, and yoga for corporate yoga, chair yoga. They have so many types out there that it's nice seeing that. But from what I've noticed, the Western side of yoga philosophy, really is no philosophy. It's all just the physical practice. And I think what I learned at Sweetheart was let's bring all these aspects together. So I'm seeing that a little bit more now with my community that I'm in, that I'm involved in, is that we are trying to incorporate not just the physical but the emotional and the mental.
Just bringing that level of spirituality back to yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes in the West we like to detract that.
For sure. And there's nothing wrong with it, but if we want to stick true to what yoga is. Again, we spoke on that. It's being present, and if you're not present, then you're not doing yoga.
Perfect. And on that note, which it seems really appropriate to just wrap it up, but Jorge, I want to thank you for joining us on the podcast. If people are interested in attending your class or getting in touch with you, how would they do that?
So you can contact me on my Facebook page, Jorge Nasser. I know it's different than Rivera, but it's my last name, my middle name that I use. It's Nasser. you can send me an email at nasser_32@icloud.com. That's NASSER_32 at iCloud.com. And yeah, just shoot me a message, and I can kind of make a personal class for you. I like to really work with one-on-one clients,
Okay.
so we can kind of delve in onto what you really need to work on. So that's kind of what I've been honing in my skills on, and it seems to be more. It seems to bring more comfortability for those beginner people. That's who I really focus on. Is so we can get them
properly introduced.
Yes, bring the fundamental poses and introduce you to what a downward dog is, what a forward fold is. If you go to a class and you don't know what that is,
it's easy to get lost.
For sure.
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people can really appreciate that. So if you're interested in starting your yoga practice and you're looking for a really competent practitioner, instructor, you definitely get in touch with Jorge.
Yes, thank you.
Jorge, I want to thank you for joining us on the podcast.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invite.
I want to thank everyone for listening, and I want to welcome everyone back to the present moment.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.